a regular basis. I kind of explain it if, you're running a marathon and you have a whole bunch of people on the side of it yelling at you, telling you can't do it and, you're horrible, and you're probably going to lose motivation to continue doing it.
Unless
that drives you.
Right.
Yes, which it's a case by case with this.
But if you're the type of person who gets driven by negative feedback, you probably have a pretty good sense of self.
Yes.
Right? Because you know that that's not you, and it's of something else. It's it's the bully who's trying to tear you down, or it's the jealous person who just wants to see you fall because they don't feel good about themselves, or whatever it is. And you go, I'm not listening to that because that's not of me. So that's where we want to get people, right? So that they're not losing motivation simply because they're being introduced to negative concepts or thoughts.
Yeah, I'm referring to the ones where they're hearing this and they're breaking themselves down, where it shuts them down. And so we start working on self-talk. How I usually explain it to people. Well, first I ask if they like children, but I say, okay, so we'll come up with a scenario, and I'm like, okay, so this child comes up to you and maybe says, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid because I can't get this word problem. I'm just a horrible person. I'm going to give up. Are you going to tell that child, yeah, you're pretty stupid? No.
Probably not.
Yeah, it's not likely. No, you'd find another way, something like, you're not stupid, we just haven't learned it yet, but we can figure this out and we're going to do this. By doing that and by talking to ourselves like we're a child pretty much, it gives us that extra support and that care that maybe we didn't get previously.
What about people who truly just really own the idea that they don't believe that they can? Like they just, I've heard people say, like, I'm just an angry person, it's like, no, you didn't come out of the womb that way. But I would imagine in the DV world, in the chronic trauma world, you get people who say stuff like that, though. They're like, but I just don't believe that I can. I just don't think I'm worthwhile. And a lot of them are suicidal too because of that, right? You have no self-worth. They don't believe in themselves. So it's like, well, why not die? So how do you combat that where it's so extreme? This is not just ambivalence where we're debating, whether or not they should care. This is like an invested, almost an identity problem where they don't believe in themselves. How do you work with that?
By that, what I do is I challenge with logic and facts. You can't argue with that. If you challenge with emotion, like, oh, but you seem like a really great guy, that's too easy to challenge.
I can reject that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you broke it down, so you're like, okay, so what constitutes a good guy? Okay, well, they're nice to people and they're giving and they're this and they're that. Okay. So from our conversation, you have told me that, you are nice to children. You're nice to older people. You're nice to this. Okay. Well, that meets part of your criteria, and it's always their criteria. It's not mine.
Right. Has to be.
And then the next thing, okay, well, you have shown me through our sessions or through stories, this, and this. That meets criteria. So if you're meeting all these criteria, what does that say to you?
Well, yes, but anyone would do that if we're role-playing this.
I don't let people say but, because when you say but, it gets rid of everything in the beginning.
Yeah. We try not to swear on this podcast, but I'm going to now.
But I stopped myself.
I know. There's an old phrase that I learned from an old friend. It says, everything before but is bullshit.
Yep.
So wrap your heads around that, people. If you're using but a lot, I would invite you to replace that with the word and invite two things to exist simultaneously. Because if you're talking about how great you are, but you're basically saying I'm not great. It's whatever follows is what really owns the conversation. So but let's say that. So you work with somebody who, you just say that. You just invalidate everything with that but. As well, all right, yeah. I get what you're saying. I've done all these nice things. That doesn't make me a nice person.
Well, I think a lot of times, too, people connect behaviors with the person that they are. So closely. Where there isn't anybody that does everything perfect and nice all the time. It's just not reality. It's
Correct.
Just not possible. So why would that make somebody a bad person? So I try to, and it depends on the person. It's hard because it's very general and everybody's different.
I know, I understand.
I try to intellectualize it to a point where so we can get out of the emotions, so that when we break it down, it becomes more understanding. Yeah.
There's some very depressed people who are very invested in their lack of self-worth.
Oh, yes.
And they come into counseling, and some fledgling clinicians might make the mistake of thinking that they quote-unquote don't want it. Mm-hmm. And I try very hard not to make assumptions about people's desires to change, because I'm going to operate on the fundamental assumption that people do want peace, tranquility, happiness, success. Whether or not they've told themselves that over time is a different matter. So to your point, intellectualizing it, where you're teaching them stuff, like teaching them the infinite possibility of human potential, teaching them that they're not limited by the labels that other people have been put on them, gives them at least an opportunity to expand their awareness away from just the investment in being depressed or being feeble or dependent or whatever it is, into the possibility that something else exists. And then from there, you can start having a discussion about supporting that maybe they're not simply only what they think they are, but they are so much greater than that. And
I always try to instill hope.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the biggest things.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. It does. Because a lot of the folks who've experienced a lot of trauma and come from violent backgrounds, they have lost a lot of hope because it's been stolen from them by the voices of authority in their lives. Mm-hmm. And it's super tragic. Talk a little bit about Safe Embrace and the case management stuff. We were hoping to have maybe an advocate worker come around, but we were a little limited on time. But I want you to at least make the plug for that, because I don't think John covered it when we talked. So what does advocacy do? How does it intertwine with counseling? Mm-hmm. And what's the agency do for this demographic?
Well, there are different advocates, and sadly, I might forget some because they all have different specialties. So we have a legal advocate, which will work with like legal issues, TPOs, child custody stuff. So and
TPO is a temporary protection order, otherwise known as a restraining order.
Yeah, a restraining order, which is really wonderful because they'll actually go to, like, say they have to go on the stand and they're terrified and they're scared. The advocates will actually go and support them so that they have a friendly face in the in the audience. So then we have rapid rehousing. So there's a few different housing possibilities to try to get people when they get out, whether it's getting them a hotel for a few days while they help find them some secure housing with an apartment. There's the shelter, and then at the shelter, there's groups, there's individual therapy there also. They have, it's a beautiful, beautiful home. Mm-hmm. There's just so many resources. They even started, now they have a store open, so the families that are there can go and get clothes and toys and different things that they need. They have, I know I'm missing some advocates.
Emily, one of our employees, she's the sexual violence advocate?
She's sexual assault.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And what does that entail? Not sure.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Good thing we're not recording this on video, because that was a really strange face.
I have a very animated face.
You do. There's
well, we do. So at Safe Embrace, we have domestic violence, we have sexual assault, and we also do human trafficking. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different events in the community. This month, there's been a lot of trivia. There's movie. There's with community partners. It's been actually really, really wonderful. So they're always in the community. They're always doing stuff. I know the Trees and Lights Gala is coming up. Then they have, like, during Christmas time, you can adopt a family or a child to give Christmas gifts to that wouldn't normally get them. Mm-hmm. It's just, they're always there, and they're always working hard for everybody in there.
I think it's really hard. It was hard for me, so I'm just generalizing that, most people probably find it hard to conceptualize what domestic violence really is like when you leave the situation with your children, your pet, and you got nothing on except the clothes on your back. So you mentioned the store. It's basically like a thrift store, discounted items, but they can spend their own money. It all self-generates to fund the agency. But it's very empowering to go shopping for the first time if you've been financially manipulated, financially abused. So that's why the store is so important. If people don't understand, it's like, why do you have a store like at the safe house? That's why, because simply getting the idea that you can pick out your own stuff and keep it as your own when you've never known that kind of autonomy or liberty is very, very empowering. And similarly, getting things like Christmas gifts. Like if you're leaving your abuser and you're taking the kids and the pets, there goes your Christmas. You know, because often the abuse and the manipulation occurs financially. So not only is there shopping involved, but there's also the gift giving and the normalcy of holiday seasons and that kind of thing. So that's why it's really powerful, and it's really important that if the listening audience chooses to donate, they can do so for the Trees and Lights Gala. You can go to safeembrace.org and find out more about that, obviously. In wrapping up, I've seen you grow a tremendous amount as your supervisor over the last year and a half or so, and it's been really cool for me to watch. And I tell people as often as I can that the most proud that I've been of everything we've done at Zephyr is host graduate students, because not only is it a service to the community for people who can't, maybe afford their copays or their deductibles, or maybe they have insurance we don't take, or maybe they just don't have insurance. We don't have to turn them away. So that's really cool. But it also gives me a chance to mentor fledgling clinicians into the profession and help grow the profession. And it's really neat to watch people grow in any capacity. What I want to know from you is, what are, 2 to 5 things that you've that stand out to you that you've learned that maybe you didn't realize you were going to learn through these experiences?
Honestly, probably my biggest thing was that I can do it, because going into the profession, not knowing anything, nobody in my family went to college, so I had to figure that out on my own. And then bartending, I never worked in mental health. I didn't even know anybody in mental health. So I had to do a lot of research and figuring it out on my own. So there was a lot of self-doubt, especially doing it as a single mom. It was very, very difficult, especially with internship, which you don't get paid for practicum internship. So it's like, so that's extra time away from kids or work or whatever. So the fact that I could do it, and what's nice about Reno too is it is smaller. So once you start to meet some people, then it gets easier to meet more and more people. Another one is that it's, at least to me, it's worth it. Every single day I come to work, I'm happy, which I haven't always experienced that. So I love what I do. I love, sitting down with people and just seeing that light in them. And it's so worth it to me every single day. What else? I don't know. Well, those are probably my big ones.
It warms my heart, though, to hear you say that, because it means that it's working. Like, what we're doing, this stuff works. It's not just me who gets a benefit by watching you grow. We're helping other people recover. Mm-hmm. And that's if I have one message to send people who are listening, it's that whatever you're struggling with is temporary. Mm-hmm. Always, 100% of the time, because you yourself even expire as a human being. So, at some point it ends. And that's not to invoke, anxiety in people, though, oh my God, I'm going to die someday. But it's to actually give hope. No matter what your situation is, we talk in terms of seasons of life or passages of time and, growth areas and all that stuff. Everything is temporary. So even though you may be continually finding yourself in a situation that seems similar over and over, it's changing, and at any point you can redirect, and I think that's the eternal hope that springs in the human spirit. And when we can help provide that light and that path to people who are really in dark places, it's really motivating to get out of bed in the morning and keep doing that. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
And my supervisor's awesome.
Well, he's no slouch. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it, and thanks for cramming in this time. I know it was last minute, and it's always fun to do these podcasts and learn new things. I've learned things about you that I didn't know, and I think the listening audience probably appreciates it too. So I always find it weird when I ask the guest, is there anything else you want to say? And it feels like any last words, like we're about to have an execution. But anything to wrap up?
No, just thank you for listening, and just know that even though you might not know how to do it, it is possible, and there's always people around. That's the joy of this profession. There's always people around willing to talk and willing to tell you whether it was how they did it or anything else. It is very much a helping profession.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. Well, thanks on behalf of the Noggin Notes team and the Zephyr Wellness family. I wish you all great mental wellness. Bye-bye.